Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 65. In this episode, we will sit down and talk about the classifications of carcinogens, uh, basically chemicals and physical agents that cause cancer. Um, you'll find these on the SDS sheets. I know that many times when I look at these, I'm not sure which which system they used. They do a really good job of saying it does cause cancer, it does not cause cancer, but they don't always really tell us exactly the system. Different systems use different forms of data and weight of evidence and all that good stuff. But let's just sit down and kind of cover a couple of the common classifications that we'll find. So before we do anything, let's sit down and really go over a couple of definitions out there. Carcinogens are substances or agents that can cause cancer, and there are two different kinds of carcinogens: activation dependent and activation independent. And much like the words say, of course, one is dependent on something and one is independent of something. Lots of different organizations out there. When we think about ones that do the research, of course, there's the EPA is doing the research. There's the International Agency for the Research of Cancer. There's a lot. There's a lot of different ones. Those are the two main ones that you're going to find on the SDS sheet. So now let's give a couple of examples on activation dependent and independent. So basically, activation dependent carcinogens require a metabolic activation or modifications to induce cancer, while activation independent ones do not. And so it's independent. And when we think about things that are independent, some of the ones that really jump out to me, of course, are chemical exposure and all. And then when we think about ultraviolet rays outside, the prevalence of skin cancer out there. When we think about smoke from tobacco products, of course, we have a lot of lung cancer and a lot of other associated cancers. This is activation independent. When we then switching gears some and we look at the SDS sheet, anything that is a carcinogen and is in excess of 0.1% of the formula has to be listed on the SDS sheet, which means that in theory, as long as it's under 0.1%, it can be a carcinogen and not listed on the SDS. Lots of chemical formulas out there. And so you may find it listed, you may not find it listed, and that's why it's always really good to sit down and look at that weight of evidence and look at all of the data out there. Now, for us who are sitting down and managing the day-to-day safety, all this is done by others for us, and then presented on the SDS sheet. So now we switch gears and we look at the three carcinogen classification categories that are out there. This is going to be when we look at on the SDS sheet, it'll say carcinogen, and it may say a 1A, a 1B, a 2, or it could even say 3, 4, and 5. Let's just talk about the ones that they have to put on there. A 1A is known to have carcinogen potential for humans, and this is based on human evidence. And then when we look at the hazard statement associated with a 1A, we have a may cause cancer. When we look at a 1B carcinogen classification, it is presumed to have the carcinogen potential for humans. And this is based on when they do animal studies and do things. Hazard statement for a 1B is may cause cancer. When we look at a classification category 2, suspected human carcinogens. And that's because they have limited evidence both on human and on animals. And so the hazard statement for this one is going to be suspected of causing cancer. They always have to say may cause cancer or suspected of causing cancer because you could still be exposed to these chemicals, and of course because the human body is so different. And when we look at diet, nutrition, exercise, all the all the different variables that we bring to the table every day, uh, you could be exposed to something all day, every day that's a cancer agent and never develop cancer. You could also, of course, be a office person who's almost never exposed to these kinds of chemicals, and it's extremely rare that it ever happens, but you get cancer. That's why they always have to say may cause cancer. There's not a 100% chance. So when we think about some of the carcinogens found in the workplace, a lot of times we can think about um, I guess I'll call them the old style chemicals. When we think about things like benzene, cadmium, coal tar pitch, one that I did not know about is diesel engine exhaust. I found that to be really interesting. There's a lot of people working in shops now that are exposed to diesel engine exhaust. Um, Formaldehyde, that's one that has been around for super long time then. So when we think about ionizing radiation, this is going to be from a actual active source, so it's not going to be a non-ionizing where it's power that's going to be generating this. Then it's going to be from a source then. Vinyl chloride and welding fumes. So welding fumes in hindsight makes sense to me because it has a lot of the different steels. The cadmium is in there and different things, but these are some of the more common ones found in the workplace. And when I kind of think about like a place that maybe that you could find this stuff, steel mill, chemical plant, oil refinery, kind of those kinds of places. Formaldehyde, of course, is extremely commonly used for hospitals, mortuaries, morgues. Um, Universities have this when you're looking at tissue samples. So you can find these in places that maybe you wouldn't think of the workplace. Like when I think about when I go to college and I pull something out and I look at something, I don't always think about that as a workplace, but there's a way that formaldehyde is getting into me then. So, and that is it for episode number 65, carcinogen classifications. Just nice, short, and sweet. I purposely did not cover the classification of 3, 4, and 5, where they sit down and they say, we have enough data that we can tell you that this does not cause cancer. You do not have to have those on the SDS sheet. You only have to put on carcinogen info. And that was really the prime focus of today's podcast. So, episode number 65 is done. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today, and have a safe day.